And you guys know what a supporter I am of Congressman Thomas Massie. Might have to cover that clip, Timbuktu. That is a great name. Very well done. I want to see if you guys notice anything interesting. First of all, you guys know what I think of Ayal Yacobi. He's another one who needs to get punched in his fucking vagina. But there is something very interesting about this particular photo. And this is an AI-generated image. Thomas Massie did not originally stand in this photograph with Ilhan Omar, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, and Rashida Tlaib. But Thomas Massie, as many of you know, is leading the effort in the House of Representatives, along with Tim Kaine in the U.S. Senate, to bring a floor vote in regards to declaring any form of military action against the country of Iran. Do you guys notice anything interesting about this particular image? Let's see if you all can figure it out. Colin, I am going to ask you, if you can you zoom in on Rashida, not Rashida, can you zoom in on Ilhan Omar's image? Okay. So what do we notice about this particular image? What do we notice with this particular image versus another image of Ilhan Omar? They made her darker. They made her nose blacker. That's what I'll call it. And this is done on purpose. This is done on purpose for a number of reasons. When you're trying to push a narrative, very much like the Zionists are doing against Mamdani in the New York mayoral race, making him darker, more full beard. The idea is to scare people, make them think that by doing so, that makes them less appealing, makes them think that they're not worthy. Anyone who can see this image, and keep in mind, I've met Ilhan on a handful of occasions, so I know she doesn't look like this. But when you're like Zionist scum suckers like Ayal Yacobi, who are trying to push a narrative, you're going to try to dress her up, make her, hijab protrude, and all that good stuff. Why? Because hoping to, by association, make that person look scary and dangerous. That's what Ilhan Omar really looks like. That's how she looks. But in that image, that's not how she looks. And they want to pretend that everybody who is a supporter of the state of Palestine is a terrorist and a racist and an anti-Semite and all that stuff. But remember, guys, it's going to fall apart. It's falling apart. We know it is. We're going to talk about this on Saturday with Colonel Wilkerson. But just to point out, the U.S. officially removed Colonel Nathan McCormick from his position at the Joint Chiefs of Staff for posts calling Israel a death cult and saying America is acting as Israel's proxy. Is there a lie here? Because I don't see it. But I'll tell you what is. This is the formation of the State of Israel.
World War I had been a conflict between rival empires, and the winners set up the League of Nations to distribute the losing side's territories between them. They called it the mandate system. putting territories once controlled by the Ottoman and German empires under the, quote, tutelage of advanced nations until they became independent. Britain was given the mandate over Palestine, but the Palestinian people were never asked what they wanted or what independence would look like to them. Listen to what Balfour wrote to one of his colleagues.
If you're not familiar with the Balfour Declaration, that is what gave rise to the creation of the State of Israel.
In Palestine, we do not propose even to go through the form of consulting the wishes of the present inhabitants of the country.
Instead, it was the Zionists who were consulted about what their vision for Palestine was, and so the mandate ended up incorporating not just the Balfour Declaration, but several clauses requiring Britain to ensure the establishment of a Jewish home in Palestine. British rule was very accommodating to the Zionist project. The Jewish community in Palestine grew with big waves of immigration. They had their own schools and factories and even their own militia, the Haganah, and they were led by the Polish-born David Ben-Gurion, the leader of their representative body, the Jewish Agency. To the Palestinians, it was clear that Britain wasn't delivering them independence. It was delivering their country to other people.
Hence the British Empire. It's all connected, guys.
The British government sent a commission called the Peel Commission to figure it out, but their proposed solution was typical. Just draw another British line on the map, divide the country, give this part to the Jews and this part to the Palestinians, and make that part of Transjordan next door. Oh, and because the Palestinians were a majority in the country, 250,000 of them would have to be removed by force to make the Jewish state viable. The Zionists knew two things. Militarily, they were stronger than the Palestinians, and Britain was exhausted by World War II, so it wouldn't have the stomach to keep fighting in Palestine. They were right. In 1947, after 30 years of occupation, Britain announced it was quitting Palestine and asked the newly formed United Nations to clean up its mess.
Balfour Declaration shows that plans for Israel existed decades before World War II. In my opinion, I don't believe Israel as a result of World War II and instead a main direct root cause for World War II. I equate Israel in many ways very much as I would equate the Patriot Act. The Patriot Act was a piece of legislation that had been on the books for many years and looking for the right time to spring it up to basically launch the surveillance state. And that's effectively what happened. Amendments 4, 5, and 6 went out the window as a result. That's what happened. And the same thing here. They were looking for an opportunity to create that Zionist state, and they used the Holocaust as the backdrop in order to create it. Who knows? We weren't alive then, but we don't know what went on behind the scenes and how the Holocaust was able to be facilitated in such a capacity that it led to what it led to. Who's to say that the Zionists didn't have a hand in the Holocaust? As far as I can see, it's not really a stretch.
In November 1947, the UN, then only made up of a fraction of the world's countries, voted to partition Palestine. This plan marked off 55% of the country for a Jewish state, but the UN never explained how it could be a Jewish state when half the people in its territory were Palestinian. By the time Britain ended its mandate on May 15, 1948, 250,000 Palestinians had fled.
Actually, they were forcibly removed by the likes of David Ben-Gurion, who is speaking at that podium right now, and that is what is known as the Nakba in 1947. Or 1948. That's the truth. And that's how this happened.
The night before, David Ben-Gurion announced the founding of the State of Israel, with himself as its first prime minister. He was standing under a giant portrait of Herzl, 51 years after Herzl had predicted this very moment. The Zionist militias came together as the newly formed Israel Defense Forces, but the fighting wasn't over. With the British out of the way, soldiers from several Arab countries entered Palestine. But the Israeli army was better equipped, better organized, and unlike the Arab armies, had a unified command and backing from several European countries. Israeli forces pushed into places that the UN had assigned to the Palestinian state, like the towns of Lidda and Ramle. 50,000 people were forced to flee from there, many on foot, in what became known as the Lidda Death March.
They have been standing on the Palestinians' necks for over 75 years. 77 to be exact, and still going. We have to bring an end to this, guys. That's our task. We must continue to speak truth to power about what the Zionist movement is all about, what it's been all about, why the formation of this state cannot stand. It is simply unacceptable at this point. That is our goal. We must not just bear witness, as Jen has pointed out, but we must also do what we can within our purview to make sure that the Palestinian people, especially the children, did not die in vain.